The Return of Sherlock Holmes 1905. Episode 9. The Adventure of the Three Students. Welcome back, fellow detectives. We've solved murders, uncovered hidden treasures, and faced the darkest criminals London has to offer. But today's case takes us somewhere quite different, the hallowed halls of academia, where the stakes might seem smaller, but the consequences can still destroy a young person's entire future. Have you ever been tempted to cheat on an important examination? Have you ever wondered what you might risk for a chance at success? Prepare yourself for a case where Holmes must solve a crime that hasn't yet been committed, a mystery of honor, temptation, and the burden of potential. Picture yourself traveling with Holmes and Watson to a prestigious university town in 1895. Holmes has been invited to consult on some ancient manuscripts, and you're staying at a comfortable hotel near the university. It's the evening before an important examination when there's an urgent knock at your door. "Mr. Holmes!" A distinguished-looking man in his 60s bursts into the room, his face flushed with distress. "My name is Hilton Soames, tutor at St. Luke's College. I need your help immediately with a matter that threatens not only my reputation, but the integrity of the entire university examination system." Holmes gestures for him to sit. "Calm yourself, Mr. Soames, and tell me what has happened." The tutor takes a deep breath. "Tomorrow morning, 3 students will sit for the Fortescue scholarship examination, the most prestigious academic prize our university offers. The winner receives significant financial support and guaranteed admission to further study. It could change a young man's entire life, and something has compromised the examination," Watson guesses. Soames nods miserably. "This afternoon I was proofreading the examination papers in my study. They contained 3 long passages from Greek texts that the students must translate. Passages they've never seen before. The examination's integrity depends entirely on these texts remaining unknown until tomorrow morning. Think about the gravity of this situation, detective. In academic circles, examination integrity is sacred. If even one student has seen the papers in advance, the entire examination becomes meaningless, and years of honest study by other students is rendered worthless. At 4 o'clock, I left my study for approximately an hour to visit a colleague," Soames continues, his voice shaking. "When I returned, I found clear evidence that someone had entered my room during my absence and examined the examination papers. The papers were in a slightly different position, one of them had been lifted, and there were traces of sawdust on my desk that weren't there before." Holmes leans forward with sharp interest. "Sawdust? That's a curious detail. What else did you observe?" Soames pulls out a small object wrapped in paper. "I found this, 3 small shavings of pencil lead, as if someone had been sharpening a pencil over my desk. And on one of the examination papers, I found a small smudge, as if someone had touched it with slightly dirty fingers." "Did you see anyone entering or leaving your study?" Holmes asks. Soames shakes his head. "No, but the situation is worse than you might think. My study is on the ground floor and the window was open due to the warm weather. However, to reach my window from outside requires passing through a small garden that's locked and only accessible to residents of our college building." Watson looks thoughtful. "So the intruder must have been someone from within the college?" Soames's face shows anguish. "That's what torments me, Mr. Holmes. Only 3 people have both access to that garden and any reason to be near my study at that hour. The 3 students who are sitting for the examination tomorrow morning." Holmes stands and begins pacing. "Tell me about these 3 students. Leave out nothing. Their characters, their backgrounds, their academic abilities." This is when the case becomes truly interesting, revealing how much human psychology matters, even in seemingly straightforward mysteries. "The first student is Gilchrist," Soames explains. "Daulat Ras. Everyone calls him Gilchrist. He's a fine scholar, though perhaps not brilliant. But he's a wonderful athlete. He's the college's best long jumper and a skilled hurdler. He comes from a wealthy family and is generally considered a thoroughly decent young man. His room is directly above my study. Can you see why this detail about athletics matters, detective? Keep it in mind as Holmes investigates further." "The second student is Daulat Ras," Soames continues. "An Indian student, brilliant but somewhat moody and solitary. He's from a princely family in India and quite wealthy. His room is also on the ground floor, just down the corridor from my study. He's capable of winning the scholarship on merit alone, but he's been under tremendous pressure from his family to excel. And the third, Holmes prompts. Soames sighs. Miles McLaren. A hard-working student from a poor family. His father is a laborer, and McLaren has struggled financially throughout his time here. He's not particularly gifted academically. In fact, he'll be lucky to pass it all. But he works incredibly hard, often studying until dawn. He's desperate to win the scholarship because without it, he'll have no future in academia. His room is on the second floor, at the far end of the building. Holmes absorbs all this information. And your study door. Was it locked when you left? Soames shakes his head. No, I rarely lock it during the day. I only stepped out for an hour, and normally no one would have any reason to enter. May we examine your study now? Holmes asks. Soames leads them across the quiet college grounds to his rooms. The study is exactly as he described. A ground-floor room with a window opening onto a small private garden. Holmes immediately begins his investigation with meticulous attention to every detail. He examines the window, the desk, the examination papers themselves. He picks up the pencil shavings with tweezers, studies them under his magnifying glass, and smells them. Fresh, he murmurs. These were shaved within the past few hours. And the type of pencil is interesting. This is an expensive drawing pencil, not the cheap writing pencils most students use. Holmes kneels on the floor, examining the carpet near the desk. Watson, come look at this. You both see small scratches in the carpet, as if something with sharp points had pressed into it. Holmes measures them carefully. 3 inches apart, running parallel. What does that suggest to you? Watson considers. Some kind of tool, perhaps climbing spikes? Holmes nods approvingly. Very good, Watson, but I think something more specific. The spikes on an athlete's running shoes. Someone wearing such shoes stood here, on this exact spot, examining those papers. Think about what this means, detective. Which of the 3 students would be wearing athletic shoes with spikes? Which one has the physical ability to make use of them? Holmes moves to the window and examines the outer wall. The window is about 4 feet above the ground, he observes. Not difficult to reach from outside, but look here. On the windowsill, there are scratches, and below the window the flower bed has been disturbed. Someone stood here, but they didn't simply peer through. They did something more athletic. He turns to Soames. How high is the ceiling in your study? Soames looks puzzled. About 10 feet, I should think. Why? Holmes points upward. Because I believe our intruder didn't enter through the window at all. They saw the examination papers from outside, but the angle was wrong to read them through the window. So they did something quite remarkable. Holmes demonstrates, gesturing to show his theory. They jumped up, caught the top of the window frame, and held themselves there, suspended in a pull-up position, long enough to look down at your desk and read the papers from above. It would require tremendous upper body strength and athletic ability. Watson's eyes widen. Good Lord, that's an extraordinary feat. Who could possibly? But Holmes interrupts. Someone young, athletic, and trained in exactly such feats. Someone who practices jumping and pulling themselves up over obstacles regularly. An athlete, specifically a long jumper and hurdler who's used to supporting their entire body weight with their arms. Soames looks stricken. Gilchrist? But he's such a decent fellow, I can't believe he would. Holmes's expression is sympathetic but firm. Let's visit his room before we draw conclusions. Sometimes the evidence tells a story that character alone cannot predict. They climb the stairs to Gilchrist's room on the first floor. Holmes knocks, and a young man answers, athletic, handsome, with an open, honest face that shows immediate concern when he sees his tutor. Mr. Soames, is something wrong? Gilchrist asks. Holmes introduces himself. Mr. Gilchrist, I'm Sherlock Holmes. I'm investigating an incident that occurred this afternoon in Mr. Soames's study. May we come in? The change in Gilchrist is immediate and devastating. The color drains from his face, his hands begin to tremble, and he steps back as if struck. I don't know what you mean, he stammers, but his guilt is written plainly across every feature. Holmes enters the room and immediately spots what he's looking for: a pair of athletic shoes with metal spikes, and most damning of all, a tall pyramidal structure made of wooden blocks on the desk. "What's this?" Holmes asks, though his tone suggests he already knows. It's for practicing balance," Gilchrist whispers, his voice barely audible. "I stack the blocks and practice standing on them to improve my athletic stability." Holmes picks up one of the blocks. "And these blocks have small metal points on the bottom to prevent slipping, don't they? Points that would leave marks exactly like those on Mr. Soames's carpet." The entire scene becomes clear. Gilchrist had been carrying these blocks, probably to take them outside for training. He'd walked past Soames's window, seen the examination papers on the desk, and faced a terrible temptation. Unable to read them from ground level, he'd performed an athletic feat, jumping up to grab the window frame and pulling himself up, suspending himself there while reading the Greek passages and memorizing them. But holding that position had been exhausting, and he'd needed something to stand on to continue reading. So he'd stacked his practice blocks on the windowsill, stood on them to get a better angle, and copied the passages, shaving his expensive drawing pencil as he worked. The sawdust had fallen from his pencil, the blocks had left their marks, and his guilt had been sealed. "I'm sorry," Gilchrist says, and suddenly he's weeping. "I'm so terribly sorry. I was walking past and I saw the papers through the window, and for just a moment I thought if I could just see them, memorize them, I'd be guaranteed to win the scholarship." "But why?" Soames asks, genuinely bewildered. "Your family is wealthy. You don't need the scholarship money." Gilchrist's voice cracks. "It's not about the money. It's about proving something. Everyone expects me to fail because I'm better at sports than academics. My father constantly reminds me that I'm a disappointment, that I should be brilliant like my older brother. I thought if I could win the Fortescue scholarship, finally, I'd be good enough. Think about the tragedy here, detective. A young man with every advantage, respected by his peers, throws away his honor for validation he doesn't even need. The pressure to succeed, to prove himself, drove him to betray everything he'd been taught about integrity." Holmes's voice is stern but not unkind. "Mr. Gilchrist, you've compromised not only your own honor, but the integrity of an examination that 2 other young men have prepared for honestly. What do you propose to do about this?" Gilchrist wipes his eyes and stands straighter, and you can see him reaching for whatever courage remains. "I'll withdraw from the examination," he says quietly. "I'll tell the university authorities what I've done, and accept whatever punishment they deem appropriate. And..." He pauses, his voice strengthening. "I'll leave the university. I'm not fit to remain here after what I've attempted." Soames looks anguished. "Gilchrist, your entire future." But the young man shakes his head. "My future would be built on dishonesty. I'd know, every day of my life, that I didn't earn whatever success I achieved. Mr. Holmes is right. I've betrayed everything the university stands for. The least I can do is accept the consequences with dignity." Holmes regards him thoughtfully. "Mr. Gilchrist, you're showing more character now than you did this afternoon. Tell me, did you actually memorize any of the passages?" Gilchrist shakes his head. "I tried, but I was so frightened of being caught, and the position was so uncomfortable that I couldn't concentrate properly. I saw the passages, yes, but I don't think I could reproduce them from memory. The whole thing was pointless." "So the examination hasn't actually been compromised," Watson observes, "at least not in practical terms." Holmes nods. "The integrity was violated, but the damage can be contained. Mr. Soames, what if we handle this quietly?" Gilchrist withdraws from the examination, leaves the university, and the other 2 students compete fairly. No scandal, no public disgrace for the college. Soames struggles with this. "But the rules require that I report any examination irregularities to the university authorities." Holmes's voice becomes persuasive. "And what would that accomplish? Gilchrist has already agreed to leave and accept responsibility. Dowletras and McLaren will compete fairly. Publicizing this incident would only damage the university's reputation and destroy a young man who's already punishing himself more severely than any board of inquiry could." Can you see Holmes's reasoning here, detective? Sometimes the appearance of justice matters less than actual justice. Sometimes mercy serves truth better than strict adherence to rules. After considerable thought, Soames agrees to the quiet resolution. Gilchrist withdraws from the examination citing personal reasons and leaves the university the following week. The Fortescue scholarship examination proceeds with just 2 candidates, Dowlett Ross and Miles McLaren. Several weeks later, back at Baker Street, Holmes receives a letter from Soames informing him of the results. Dowlett Ross won the scholarship with a brilliant performance, while McLaren passed respectably and has secured a position as a teacher at a provincial school. Both young men's futures are secure, earned through honest effort. There's also a letter from Gilchrist himself, posted from South Africa. Dear Mr. Holmes, I wanted you to know that I've joined the Rhodesian police. It's hard work, and I'll never be rich or famous, but I'm earning my keep honestly. I think about that day in my room often, how close I came to destroying myself permanently. You gave me a chance to make things right, and I'm trying every day to be worthy of that chance. Thank you for seeing something in me worth saving. Watson reads the letter over Holmes's shoulder. You were right to convince Soames to handle it quietly. That young man deserved a second chance. But Holmes looks thoughtful. Did I do the right thing, Watson? I circumvented the rules, allowed a guilty party to escape official punishment. Some would say I failed in my duty to report a crime. But you prevented a greater injustice, you point out. Gilchrist made a terrible mistake, but he was punishing himself more than any court could, and the examination wasn't actually compromised. Holmes nods slowly. That's what I tell myself. But I wonder sometimes if mercy is the same as justice, or if I simply chose the easier path that avoided difficult consequences. Watson pours them both brandy. Holmes, you once let a murderer escape because you believed a higher justice had been served. This case is far less serious. No one was harmed, nothing was actually stolen. A young man faced temptation, failed the test, and is spending the rest of his life making amends. That seems like justice to me. What struck me most, Holmes reflects, was how Gilchrist's athletic ability, his greatest talent, became the very tool of his near downfall. The same strength and coordination that earned him praise and admiration enabled him to attempt this betrayal. Sometimes our greatest gifts can become our greatest temptations. Think about that lesson, detective. The abilities that make us special can also lead us astray if we use them for the wrong purposes. Strength can serve honor or betray it. Intelligence can build or destroy. Everything depends on the choices we make when faced with temptation. So tell me, detective, did you guess how Gilchrist managed to read the papers from outside? Could you have deduced his identity from the athletic shoe marks and the blocks? And what do you think? Did Holmes make the right choice in allowing Gilchrist to escape official punishment? This morally complex case reminds us that academic integrity is about more than following rules. It's about the character we build through honest effort. Gilchrist learned that lesson the hard way, but he learned it nonetheless. Sometimes the greatest education comes not from textbooks but from the consequences of our mistakes. It also shows us that Holmes isn't just a detective who solves crimes. He's a man who makes moral judgments about when punishment serves justice and when mercy accomplishes more. Not every crime requires public exposure and maximum penalty. Sometimes the guilty party's own conscience and the private shame of their failure punishes more effectively than any court could. Join me next time as we investigate the adventure of the Golden Pince-Nez, where the discovery of a body leads Holmes to uncover the secret double life of a university professor and a conspiracy that reaches back decades into revolutionary Russia.